Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. And thanks for joining me here today. Um, I am doing today's episode on the topic of how do I rise above the fear of death. And this came to mind because I recently wrote my Substack post called Soul Code, talking about the top 5 mistakes people make when they're using AI for end of life issues. And near the end, ChatGPT suggested some helpful prompts people could use that are more effective and that would help them avoid some of the mistakes like bypassing and shutting down grief and fear of death using AI to do that. More effective prompts that help you actually face what you're trying to look at. And so one of the thoughts that came from ChatGPT was about using AI to face the fear of death and asking AI for help with that. So I did that. I entered how do I rise above the fear of death in ChatGPT and got some ideas there. And I decided that would be a great topic for us to talk about. I'll share with you some of the suggestions ChatGPT gave to me, but also my thoughts on those suggestions and how I think they might be used. And then next week, I'm going to come back to the same topic and cover these points, but I'll be using my book, The Tao of Death, which has verses in it for contemplation around death and dying. And so I want to tie that in as a practical guidebook in a sense that you can use for a contemplative practice on death and the fear of death, and as a guide for journaling and meditation. So anyway, we're going to talk about how do I rise above the fear of death, and these are some of the ideas that ChatGPT shared with me. And so to start with, remember that it's actually normal for humans to fear death. We're wired to fear the unknown, and death is the ultimate unknown. We have a survival instinct that encourages us to do everything possible to stay alive. And so it makes sense. We come wired with a fear of death, and really our life experience either helps us with that or makes it worse, I think, because if we have some very unpleasant encounters with death, perhaps at a young age, the death of a pet or a parent or another close loved one, and we're not taught about it skillfully by adults in our lives, we may develop fears over things that we've seen and heard and witnessed that we don't understand. We may be traumatized by the idea of death and carry that with us for all of our lives. On the other hand, some of us may have had experiences that were very positive and warm, and that helps show us death as a natural part of life, the cycle of life, death in nature. Even if our parents talk to us about the leaves falling off of trees in autumn, about plants dying and then growing again in the spring, if we have had those conversations in a loving, safe, warm, guided way, we may have less discomfort about the idea of death. And yet, still, there is an innate fear for each one of us of the actual dying process and a fear of what happens the moment I take my last breath. What will happen? And it is unknown, though every religion has described an afterlife and what could possibly come after death and follow death. And I think that's one of the functions of religion, is to help us explore those possibilities. But the truth is, no one really knows. We do have information from people who have had near-death experiences, though, who, for the vast majority of them, report that it's a very positive experience that they have witnessed and taken part in when for a certain limited amount of time, their bodies stop functioning. And so they describe light and love and beauty. And I think hearing those accounts of people who've had those experiences can be very comforting to anyone who has a tremendous fear about it. Still, however, as each one of us contemplates what will happen the moment I die, that is such a complete unknown to us because we don't know when it will happen or how, what the circumstances will be, or what we will experience. And again, it's normal to experience fear. And so when we talk about rising above the fear, I don't mean that we will eliminate it. What I'm hoping is that we will be able to live with the normal, natural amount of fear that we're born with and wired with without rejecting all thoughts about death, without needing to push it away from our awareness. Because one of the ways to live the most fully is to be cognizant of the idea that we're mortal and we won't be here forever. Life is fleeting. So we have to be able to carry an awareness of death and mortality in order to fully participate in this life, to fully experience love and joy, and commit 100% to being fully alive. It means that we have to also accept that I won't be here forever. That's why I need to make the most of this life that I have. So, as we talk and reflect a little bit today on the fear of death, just remember nothing is meant to be judgmental. It's normal for all of us to have a fear of death, and normal for any one individual to have greater amounts of fear for various reasons in their life. So this is just kind of a compassionate reflection on the fear of death and some ways that we might go about looking at it with my assistant ChatGPT. I'm always interested to hear what AI thinks and how AI talks to us about death and dying. So these are some ideas that came. And one of the first things that actually really surprised me when I typed in my question about how do I rise above the fear of death is that ChatGPT suggested reframing it. And ChatGPT said, what if the idea is not to rise above or transcend the fear of death, but to actually dive beneath it and to embody it and to live it fully from the depths? That kind of blew me away because I have never heard that particular thought before. The idea of diving deep into death and dying instead of trying to rise above it. Because it made me realize rising above the fear of death, that's in a sense suggests bypassing it, trying to get on top of it, above it, to get it under control. And so that's the very first thing that came to me from ChatGPT that I found rather remarkable. This concept of what if we stop trying to think, I need to transcend it or get over it or get past it? What if we just need to dive into it and fully accept it and embrace it? And so as we dive into this topic, as suggested by ChatGPT, I do want to share that mystics, meditators, hospice patients, people who have spent time contemplating death and facing death tell us that they all experience a shift once they confront death, in a sense, and once they stop trying to run from death or escape from it. And that most of those people say life becomes more valuable, more meaningful, more precious in the light of death. And so there is a real reason to dive into this subject as we're going to today. So I'll share with you first. ChatGPT suggested 5 doorways through which to explore death and dying. And I thought that was really interesting. The first was to look beneath the fear and to really think about, where does my fear of death come from and what is it made of? What is it that I'm actually afraid of? Am I afraid of being in pain? Am I afraid of being alone, of having to go through something in a solitary way with no one else to care for me, to be with me in the moment? Am I afraid of the idea of not existing anymore? Am I afraid of blackness, in a sense, of nothingness, and having no awareness and no presence whatsoever? Also, perhaps I'm afraid of unfinished business. And some people literally are afraid that they haven't fully lived their lives. They haven't fully taken advantage of the opportunities they've had to be alive while they're here. And they're afraid of missing out on something. They're afraid maybe they didn't get everything that life was offering them, didn't get to taste all of it. And the idea that death is going to come too soon before I've had a chance to do what I was meant to do or what I wanted to do or to have the experiences that I long for. I think there can be a real fear of that, of everything coming to an end before we're ready for it. And if you think about it, it does make a big difference to us when and how we die, because when someone dies at a young age, it feels very tragic to us. We think of it in terms of all that has been missed and lost, all that their loved ones will miss, all the time they won't have to spend together, and all the experiences that young person will never have in their lifetimes. And when someone very, very old dies, it often feels somewhat like a relief for that person in a way, especially if they've been sick and in pain. It feels like they deserve to rest now if that's what they would like. And we feel grateful on their behalf that they had a long life, lots of opportunities to experience many, many different things and to learn much about life. And we can imagine at a very old age, we ourselves might feel like it's time or feel ready to go. So the fact that we don't know for sure what lies in store for us is one of those unknowns that makes death frightening. We may fear that we will, as I said before, we will die before our time, die before we're ready, die before we can easily accept it. And one thing I will say about aging and reaching a more advanced age now, at least an age that I used to think was pretty old, it really does soften the perspective on death. I'm getting much closer to it now. And yet there's so much of life to look back on. I've had so many experiences and lived so fully and loved every moment of it. I don't want to give up any moment that I still might have. And yet there is a deep satisfaction that life has been good. And I have made the most of it so far. I want to continue to do that. But it is nice as you get older, as you have accumulated life experiences, to lose a little bit of that fear of missing out, because you can already see how full life has been. Yes, we want more, of course, as much as we can have, but it feels less tragic in a sense than when I was 20 years old and contemplating that I might die any day. Feels much less tragic to me now, 50 years later. So the very first step, the first doorway, as ChatGPT suggests, is to look beneath the fear and to really understand it and name, what is it? Am I afraid of missing out? Am I afraid I haven't done enough? Some people who believe that the afterlife may consist of a heaven and a hell are frightened because they fear they haven't made the best choices in life. And they may fear hell because they may wonder if they deserve that somehow because of actions they've taken or things they haven't done. And so I can imagine a huge amount of fear if you have that belief system, and also if you question your own worthiness and value. So at any rate, it's helpful for all of us to sit down and really look at, what is my fear? How intense is it? Where does it come from? what either fed my fear when I was younger or allayed my fear, what may have altered the amount of fear that I came here with in my life, and are there things that I need to reconsider, reevaluate, and even old wounds that need to be healed around death and dying. The second doorway that ChatGPT suggested is learn to die before you die. And this is a teaching from Buddhism that I value. And it's the idea, and I think other mystical traditions teach it as well. It's really the idea of learning how to surrender the attachments, the expectations, the desires of lower consciousness, and which requires a million little deaths, tiny little deaths in life. We let go of our assumptions that we should be healthy all of our lives, that we should be successful, we should be able to do this or have that, or find joy or find love. We begin to let go of all of those attachments to appreciate our own lives such as they are in this moment, whatever they consist of. And we do have to die a million times to get to that place of acceptance for life. And literally, it's a lifelong piece of work to work on gradually letting go of all of the things that we thought life should consist of, so that we can truly appreciate and be grateful for what our lives do contain and do consist of. And so we also let go of old identities, who we thought we were and who we thought we were going to become, what we thought we would do for our career or with our time, what we thought we would accomplish. We have to let go of our illusions that we have control. And this speaks directly to the ego, which its main function is to try to be in control of everything and to control circumstances. It is the ego that is terrified of death because death cannot be controlled. And the ego is so frightened by the idea of death and dying. It must repress it or push it away or do everything possible to try and control it. And so learning how to die before we die simply means being able to surrender fully to life as it has unfolded for us. And undoubtedly, all kinds of things we used to want or think could happen or might happen, things we used to strive for and set our sights on as goals for life. We've had to let go of many, many things that didn't turn out the way we had hoped. But that is the process of all the little deaths, the million little deaths that happen to us over and over again through life. When we accept that this process of letting go is really what the spiritual path consists of, it happens much more easily. We don't fight it and resist it, and we don't create self-pity and spiral into victimhood anymore, because we understand I was always meant to die these million deaths. I was always meant to let go of these things. I was always meant to surrender to it. And so I think that is a really important part of the practice. And some of us may want to focus more in on it and even sit down and think of all the ways that what have you had to die to? What old identity or goal or belief or desire have you had to surrender and sacrifice because they aren't real. They don't exist. They're not happening. They're not unfolding in this lifetime. And that could be another doorway. I really like that idea from ChatGPT. Another doorway of facing up to mortality and facing our inevitable death of the physical body. And Chat writes, surrender can be sacred. And so I think that is a really good reminder that these million little deaths that we experience before our ultimate final physical death, they are sacred experiences. They are part of our spiritual growth and development. And so we don't have to be angry and resentful about all these detours and delays and changes that have happened during life. We can view them as tiny, sacred little moments that are helping to guide us on this journey that we're on, this unknown, fascinating, mysterious journey of life. And so the third doorway from ChatGPT is to practice presence. And Chat writes, the fear of death lives in the imagined future. So, so true. Because all of our thoughts about our own death are in our imagination. We don't know what's going to happen or when, but we can spend endless hours of time imagining it. And in some ways, our end of life planning, when we have people fill out advance directives, in some ways it is trying to imagine the future and trying to imagine what you would want. And that takes us a little bit out of the present moment. And so I think that's a cautionary reminder that let's not get so caught up in trying to plan for the very end that we dwell there too much, because wait, you're alive right now in this moment, this present moment. Put that pen down and go outside and watch the sunset, or go laugh with someone, or take a walk in nature, or just enjoy the moment. So if you are overly obsessed with planning for the end of life, it might be the ego trying too hard to take control and living in the imaginary future instead of just being here right now in this moment, enjoying what life is for you where you are right now. And Chat reminds us peace lives in the present moment. If we want to be at peace, but you know what else lives in the present moment? Joy and love. These are all attainable for us now in this moment. They don't exist in the future. And for us, we can experience them now in this moment. And so be present in the moment. And it might be that your way of being present today is to fill out your advance directive today. And that's part of what you're being present with today, is to make some decisions. But remember to appreciate today for what it is and not dwell too long in the imaginary future. I really love that. And some of the practices that ChatGPT recommends: meditation, breathing practices, inhale and exhale, experiencing awe. And I have talked about this in previous episodes. Being able to look up at something above us in the sky. That's actually looking up at the sky, looking up sometimes at a skyscraper, looking up at the domed ceiling of a cathedral, at something above us. That act of raising the eyes and looking up helps us get into a sense of awe. Oh, and one of my favorites is being outdoors in a forest or in the woods, when you can look up at the canopy of leaves from the trees you're walking underneath, the canopy of branches and leaves, and how beautiful it is. It's like this beautiful lace design, and seeing the blue sky in between the branches and the leaves. Amazing. And all it takes really is one glimpse of the stars at night, and it will transport you into a place of awe and wonder. And that is one of the most magnificent feelings that you can capture in the present moment, is to just be in awe and appreciate the beauty of this planet, of the universe, the galaxy that we're in, and just soak it up and feel grateful for the opportunity to be here, to be awake and aware and alive at this very moment, experiencing what is happening right now. And that is the beauty of a moment of awe when you experience it, particularly in nature. And ChatGPT also talks about rituals can return us to the now. Light a candle, listen to a song, sing a song, dance, something that you are doing with your body in this very moment that reminds you of the preciousness of just being alive and having five senses, even to eat something and experience fully the taste. That can be remarkable. So that's the way to practice presence. The more fully you are right here, right now, in this moment, the more you're getting every drop you can out of life, every drop of joy and love that you can out of your life, and meaning as well. And when it happens that it is the moment that you die, those fears that you missed out and you didn't really get to experience your life will vanish. They will dissolve. They won't be there because your life will have been so full up to that very point. The fourth doorway that ChatGPT recommends is to connect to something larger. And Chat says whatever language you use, God, spirit, the universe, love. Recognize that there's something bigger out there than just us, than just our little human existence on planet Earth. And not everyone can recognize that. Not everyone is at a place where they feel comfortable looking out that far with that big a scope, or not everyone can allow that type of awareness into their belief system. But if you are in a place where you can appreciate, like, look at this universe, there has to be some sort of creative force behind it for everything to be following such patterns and to be so cohesive and coherent throughout this universe. There's some creative energy, some creative power out there. And once you're aware of that, and I call it in some of my writing, taking the galaxy view, when you're looking from the highest possible vantage point, your own life and its issues and your own lifetime becomes nothing but a tiny blip. It's so small. It's so insignificant in some ways compared to the vastness of this entire universe that it seems silly almost to be worrying too much about what's going to happen. What will it be like? It almost seems laughable that we worry about the future, but it actually seems sacred that we can be fully alive right here in this moment. As much as we're a tiny blip and insignificant, we also matter. That we are here right now in this moment also matters in the whole spectrum. The universe wouldn't be what it is right now if my speck of life wasn't part of it right now. I contribute something that matters to this vast, unknown expanse of existence. And so, yes, I'm a tiny blip, but I'm also an important, essential blip. There's something incredible about viewing life that way. My life has meaning, and yet it's teeny tiny at the same time. And it's this paradox that I find really delicious to think through and to just hold on to that. And so I think it's an important connection for those of us who can go there. And again, some people may have been traumatized by religious beliefs in the past that make it very uncomfortable for them to contemplate, is there a God? Is there a creator? They may feel they need to stay away from that type of belief system. And that it's up to each person and your own personal journey, whether you can experience that or not, whether that's right for you or not. But if it's comfortable for you, I encourage you to get to the galaxy view and see the vastness of the universe, and see both ends of the paradox of being, on the one hand, the tiniest blip imaginable, and on the other hand, essential at this moment for the universe to be exactly what it is. It's pretty powerful. And I love it that ChatGPT included this connect to something larger as one of the doorways. The fifth doorway that ChatGPT mentioned is speak the fear aloud. And I think this is also really powerful. And it's one of the things a lot of us in the end of life movement has talked about, the importance of being able to talk about death and dying. And a lot of times we're talking specifically about, how do you want to die? What do you want your life to be like. We're talking about the practical, tangible decisions you make around death and dying. But we also need to talk about it philosophically. We need to be able to talk about death and what it means for all of life, that death is a part of it. We need to think about it spiritually, talk about it from many different perspectives, so that it becomes normal to us to think about death and talk about death. And we don't have to always be talking about our own death and how we're preparing for it and what we want for our death, but talking about death in the bigger terms, like what does death mean in the universe? When a star dies, what is death like for the rest of the universe? What is death like for other planets? What is death like on our planet in nature? And really have a comfort level in contemplating and thinking about death in general, and also, of course, applying it to your own life. But being well versed in just the idea and the presence of death in the universe, and coming to appreciate that presence, coming to appreciate death as part of this entire cycle and the way it's all been set up, how everything in the universe functions on this cycle of life and death. It's rather phenomenal. And it's helpful if we don't carry fear and discomfort around death all by ourselves, alone in the quiet spaces of our minds, or maybe even in the recesses where we hide it away. If we find others to talk with about death and dying, and even listening to this podcast is one way of connecting. You're hearing me talk about it. Maybe that will help you with your own thoughts. But if you can begin to cultivate other people in your life who are able to speak with you about death and dying and just contemplate it and wonder about it sometimes, that could be very helpful to realize you're not the only person who thinks about these things and who struggles with it or who has fear. So you may be able to find a trusted friend to converse with. You might, if you feel you have an intense fear that interferes with how you live your life, maybe you need a therapist who can help you with past trauma that you've experienced. And so a therapist, or maybe a support group, or even a death cafe group where you could go to talk. Maybe a spiritual provider could help you if you have spiritual fears about death and dying that came from past religious experiences. Writing in your journal is one way to feel less alone, in a sense, because it's as if you're having a conversation with your journal pages and writing down your thoughts, sometimes writing back answers and writing down different points of view in your journal. And using AI is one option. You have to be careful, and I keep writing about cautions about how you use AI, because AI can just reflect back to you what you already think and feel. It's very important when you prompt AI to ask questions and to ask for, show me different perspectives. Give me different things to read about my fear of death that could be helpful, and show me what other people are thinking. Tell me about a bigger perspective. If you only write your own individual point of view and you ask the AI to validate it for you, you may get validation of your fear. You may find even more reasons to be fearful than you had already. So it is important to remember to ask for something bigger. Don't just ask to be validated for what you already think. Ask to be shown other ways of thinking, or ask, what am I missing? What is it that I don't know? What is it that I might be misunderstanding? Show me some other points of view and perspectives. That's the most important thing to remember when you do use AI. And so, it's important to use AI with discernment, consciously, and with care. And then remember in the end that the fear of death is normal and natural. It's part of just being awake and aware in life. And remember that we're not really trying to get rid of the fear or overcome it. We're trying to learn how to live with it. And the fear itself can help us live life more fully. So, a quote from ChatGPT is, "Perhaps the greatest courage is not to overcome fear, but to live tenderly beside it." And I love that. So that will end this episode today. And remember, next week I'm going to come back and we're going to go through the Tao of Death. And I'll share some passages there that help us, that maybe reflect these 5 doorways. So I'll see you again next week. Until then, remember, we're here for love, which we can only experience in the very present moment. But being here for love means we're also here for grief. So face your fear of death, be ready for whatever life brings you next, and love each and every moment of your very precious existence. Bye-bye.